The idea before was almost everybody goes to heaven and you just have to be a good person. And now Our Lady of Fatima is showing the children a vision of hell. You go to hell for mortal sin, dying in mortal sin. Well, here I am building a parking lot and souls are going to hell. What are you doing about it, Lieutenant? What are you doing about it? Temporal matters versus eternal. Eternal matters. This is eternity. This is forever. People lost, people being saved. My name is Father Ignatius Manfredoni, and I'm a Franciscan Friar of the Immaculate. I was born in the month of May, which is the month of Our Lady, and my family's parish at the time was St. Mary's in Holliston, Massachusetts. So I was born in Our Lady's month. I was baptized in Our Lady's parish, and after my baptism, my mother brought me over to Our Lady's statue and offered me to Our Lady as a gift. I believe that Our Lady definitely accepted that donation, that gift, and from that moment really had her eyes on me and considered me as her own, and for that I am forever grateful. As I was arriving to my senior year in high school, there was no thought of vocational discernment, or even the word discernment wasn't even really made known to me. It was actually during my junior year of high school that the National Guard came and did an air assault demonstration on our football field, meaning they came in helicopters and repelled out of helicopters onto the football field. And I thought that was really cool. And so I went home with the idea of entering the Army, and my father said, well, if you want to join the Army, then why don't you go to West Point or apply to West Point? So I started looking into West Point, seeing what that was all about, and that looked cool too. So I did end up applying to West Point, and I was accepted, and so that's where I went. It was while I was there that actually I had a deepening of my faith, kind of an enlightenment, really. And it was during a field exercise between my junior and senior year that another cadet and I were on guard duty in the middle of the night out in the field. And so he brought up a miracle that took place at his grandparents' parish. Namely, the main crucifix in the church changed colors and it moved, and everybody in the congregation saw this happen. For me, this was a turning point because it got me thinking, well, wait a second, if that miracle is true, isn't that a confirmation that our faith is true? Now, the way I was brought up in the faith, I had Protestant friends, I had a Jewish friend, and nobody was claiming that their faith was true. It was more of an atmosphere of religious relativism. Like, it didn't really matter what religion you were. We hoped that our religion was true, and you were the religion that you were because of the family you were born into. So that was the general feeling. As far as heaven goes, well, you just need to be a good person, and almost everybody goes there. When this other cadet explained to me that miracle, it got me thinking, well, if that's true, and we know cadets don't lie, then doesn't that mean our faith is true? And if our faith is true, then doesn't that mean that other faiths are wrong? So I started investigating that, and I found out that, in fact, the Catholic Church does teach that it's the only true faith. So that was a big game changer for me. I also providentially had a roommate who was a practicing Christian, not Catholic, and he began to challenge some Catholic beliefs, the typical ones about Mary and purgatory and the papacy and these type of things. And I didn't know the answers, and so I started looking into seeing what the answers were. And the answers that I found were very, very convincing, rock solid. And so the more I started learning and studying, more it just confirmed me in the faith. And so, the prayer and sacraments became regular. And at a certain point, my hometown parish priest gave me a rosary. And I had never prayed the rosary before. So I started praying the rosary, and I'm sure Our Lady loved that. I was bringing her more and more into my life and developing this relationship with my spiritual mother and opening the avenues of grace. And certainly the graces were flowing. In fact, I remember at a certain point I stopped praying the rosary because, again, I wasn't used to praying a lot. I just had a certain sense that things were not right. They weren't going so. It was just an interior sense like something's off track. And so I started to pray the rosary again, and yeah, there was more clarity, more peace, and just an interior sense that things are better when I'm praying the rosary. During that fall of my senior year at West Point, my mother gave me the book Fatima, the Great Sign. So I read that book with great interest, and to be honest with you, I was a little upset that why am I 21 years old and just now learning that the Mother of God appeared in Fatima, Portugal in 1917? That's upset me a little bit, because here we have 80,000 people witnessing the miracle of the sun, and that's a big deal. And here we have another confirmation of our faith. In particular, when Our Lady opened up the earth and showed the children the vision of hell. The idea before was almost everybody goes to heaven and you just have to be a good person. And now Our Lady of Fatima is showing the children a vision of hell. And she says, behold, hell, where the souls of poor sinners go. And so then I learn about, wow, you go to hell for mortal sin, dying in mortal sin. And that makes a significant impact on me. And eventually, when I was out in active duty a couple years later as an Army engineer, and just one of the reflections that came to my own mind was, well, here I am building a parking lot and souls are going to hell. What are you doing about it, Lieutenant? What are you doing about it? Okay, well, there's something I can do about it, right? I can become a priest. I can become a religious, and that would be great charity towards my neighbor if I gave my life to Our Lady as a priest and religious and worked more intently, more directly for the salvation of souls. I mean, isn't that more important than providing parking spaces here at the supermarket? Well, so these are the reflections that came into my mind. I reflect about temporal matters versus eternal. I mean, eternal matters. This is eternity. This is forever. People lost, people being saved. So that made a very big impact on me and my own discernment process in deciding to say yes in giving my life to God through the hands of Our Lady. When I arrived at my assignment in Fort Carson, Colorado, I met a devout Catholic man who introduced me to St. Louis de Montfort and the spirituality of total consecration. I took that booklet in hand and I made my total consecration to Our Lady on March 25th of 1997. What happens when you do that is you open up the avenues of grace to their maximum. So now Our Lady has full reign to fulfill her mission as your spiritual mother. What happened shortly after that, within the next month or two, the idea came into my mind, well, if I have these years of Army service and commitment, maybe I'd rather spend them as a Catholic chaplain rather than as an engineer. I was an engineer at the time, a construction battalion. And at a certain point, we also had a change of command at the battalion level. And when my new battalion commander introduced himself to the battalion on the first day, the first thing he said was, first and foremost, I'm a Roman Catholic. So there I had my company commander and my battalion commander were both devout Catholics. They were very much in favor of me going to the seminary. So in a matter of months, I was out of active duty. We're talking December of 1997. That's just a few months after I made my total consecration, and I really attribute that to the fruit of total consecration, that Our Lady worked that out, and then I started the seminary in January of 1998. But during my time there, I discerned that I was not called to the chaplaincy, but really the Franciscan way of life. Now, at the same time, there was another seminarian there, and he too was inclined to Franciscan spirituality and had made a few visits to the Franciscans of the Immaculate. And he was coming back and he was telling me all about the Franciscans of the Immaculate and how edifying they were, and saying that I too should make a visit. And so I did end up making a visit, and I liked what I saw. I especially liked the fact that they had a fourth vow of total consecration to Our Lady. I was coming to the end of my time at the seminary, and it wasn't crystal clear what the will of God was for me, because remember, there's a lot of change going on in my life, and I didn't want to be one of these souls that just jumps from one thing to another. I graduate from West Point. Now I'm in active duty. Now I'm out of active duty in the seminary, studying for the military chaplaincy. Now I'm leaving that track, and now I'm going to the Franciscans. That's a lot of change, and so I wasn't sure, what is going on? I don't want to just hop from one thing to another. So the discernment process wasn't easy. One day when I visited the shrine of Our Lady of Fatima in Holliston, Massachusetts, and I was walking around the shrine and I was praying at the various statues and stations, and I climbed up on the hill of Calvary next to Our Lady, standing at the foot of the cross, and I was just thinking to myself, what should I do with my life? And I just thought, why don't I just think of it this way? If I could do anything with my life, what would it be? And it just occurred to me, it would be a friar of the Immaculate. That's what it would be. I did enter in August of 1999, and that's actually the first time that things started to get difficult. And these were difficulties that I did not experience at the diocesan seminary as I was studying philosophy, but these were new difficulties, and I was having a lot of problems. But really, I look back and I think what was going on was part of the purgative way, right? There was a lot of purification, and you can imagine all of the pride and self-love that one acquires going to West Point and being an Army officer and things like that. So I had a lot of that, I think, that needed to be purged, painfully purged. And to be honest with you, a lot of people, when they think of West Point and the Army, they think of, tough life and discipline and all of that. And you know what? That was like a field like tiptoeing through the tulips compared to the difficulties faced in religious life and going through the purgative way and spiritual battle, right? Spiritual battle is much more difficult than worldly battle and worldly difficulties. As the book reminds me of the book of Sirach, chapter 2. My son, if you want to serve the Lord, prepare yourself for trials. And that is exactly what I experienced. But by the grace of God, and certainly Our Lady's maternal care, as we know, the spirituality of total consecration, what does it bring with it? Well, it makes this path of sanctification easier and faster. Our Lady certainly took me by the hand and led me through all of those difficulties and gave me the grace of perseverance. I don't regret a moment of it. I'm 100% convinced that this is where I'm supposed to be, and I couldn't be happier. This is the foretaste, the antechamber to heaven, is to be doing the will of God and to belong to Our Lady.